why there is a need to retell our history, because there is a massive debate going on now as to whether there is a need to retell our history or not. I want to hear your side of the story and what your thoughts are on this subject.
Thank you for asking this question. For several decades, I used to teach history at Delhi University. And that is when I realized what a conscious attempt is being made by a certain group of historians to hide facts from us. I'll just give you some examples. The Arab invasions to India began in the late 7th century. And it took 75 years for the Arabs to get control of Sindh, just the small province of Sindh. And we have to keep in mind, at that time, the Arab armies had no difficulty in conquering large parts of, going up to Spain and Portugal, France, and the Egypt, Persia, etc., Syria. So when they came to the Sindh area, they were themselves surprised at the resistance they met, because this is the kind of resistance they had not met. So for 75 years, it took them to control Sindh. And after they had controlled Sindh also, there were repeated attempts to overthrow them. Then apart from Sindh, there were two other tiny Hindu kingdoms, Kabul and Zabul. So to cut a long story short, it took the Arabs and Turks almost 400 years before they established a foothold in Punjab. Now, this is a story that is unsurpassed in the history of the Arab expansion, Arab and Turkish expansion. And the surprising thing is that we have a series of inscriptions by Indian rulers of that period recording how they have withstood the Arab and Turkish armies. And certain kings were given the title of repeller of the unrepellable. Matlab that a person who could not be repelled, they have repelled that person. So this is the kind of, the way it has been recorded. And we must remember that no inscription is completely full, because we've had, the times take a toll on the preservation of inscriptions. Then we've had so many invasions, etc., etc. So the inscriptions that we have, they are a really stirring story they tell of the resistance that the rulers of India presented to the Arab and Turkish armies. Now, in the syllabus that I and many others taught at Delhi University, this phase of our history is just totally erased. It's not mentioned. What is mentioned is causes of Turkish success. And the causes of Turkish success that we are supposed to tell the students is that, Hindu society was divided, caste was a factor that fractured Hindu society, and the natives of India, they welcomed the invaders because they were presenting a liberating message. They were giving a liberating message. Now, I just want to make 2-3 points. When the Arab and Turkish invasions began, that time, there is a story, there's a myth. It hides a historical fact about which we don't know much, that there was an Agnikul Yagya that was conducted at Mount Abu. And from that, the priests created the Rajput. The Rajputs, according to this story, were created by an Agnikul Yagya. And who were the people who were given this Rajput status? They were all tribal communities. So when we talk about the rigidity of the caste system, it's not true, because the caste system gave Rajput status to tribal communities. Apart from that, peasant, farming is not a 12-month occupation. It's only seasonal. So peasants in India used to routinely serve as soldiers in non-harvest season. So, I can go on, but there were so many such factors which were not taught to us. The attempt was to show Indian society as a fractured society, as a rigid society, as an oppressive society, and a caste-bound society. And the people of India welcomed the liberation. Now the second point is that the early invaders were very conscious of their racial superiority. So they were not at all willing to give the native converts the same status that they had as Arabs and Turks. So these are many myths that, gradually over a period of my study, I realized that what we are teaching in Delhi University is a conscious, deliberate attempt to hide facts. And if I can just give you one more example, in the medieval India period, which we were taught, there was a subject, the teachings of Nanak and Kabir. Now, when I went into this paper, I realized that they have totally erased the persecution of the Sikh gurus by the Mughal emperors. So you're just focusing on the teachings of Guru Nanak, which are important, but the Mughal period is important because the Sikh gurus, their tenure was matching the tenure of the Mughal emperor, Guru Nanak, and Aurangzeb, Guru Gobind Singh. And of course, Banda Bahadur also came into that. So you're just trying to focus on the teachings of Guru Nanak. What about the way that Guru Arjan was treated by Jahangir, Guru Hargobind by Shah Jahan, and Guru Tegh Bahadur and Guru Gobind Singh by Aurangzeb? So why aren't you having this? And one more example I'll give. The NCERT textbook that was written by Professor Satish Chandra, it had to discuss the end of Guru Arjan. We all know that he met his end because of the orders of Jahangir. And there is no debate about it because Jahangir recorded it in his autobiography, the Tuzuk-e-Jahangiri. It's available on the net. Anyone can access it. In that, he says that, his shop had become very big. And I thought that I should put an end to it. So he has himself confessed. But when the Marxist historians have to report this in a textbook, what does he write? The death of Guru Arjan by Jahangir. Now, how is a student of 15, 16 supposed to understand by death by Jahangir, you mean that he was actually met his end because of Jahangir? So this kind of distortion is there on so many issues. And no group of historians can have the ultimate say, the final say. History is not the final, that it's the Bible or the Quran or the Gita, that the word has been said and nobody can change it. It is an evolving discipline. And if it doesn't evolve, it stagnates. And that is why fresh air, fresh breath has to be breathed into this discipline.
Absolutely.